Most of the time, we're praying, God, get me out of this challenge. Get me out of this trouble at work. Get me out of this financial setback. There's nothing wrong with that. But before you get out, you have to invite God in. Sometimes the miracle is not in getting out, it's in what God is going to do in the situation. Instead of just praying, God, get me out, why don't you start praying, God, come into this hospital room while I'll take the treatment. Come into this trouble at work where the people aren't fair. Come into this anxiety that I'm dealing with. What's more powerful than God bringing you out is when God comes in and begins to change things. He comes in and gives you a favor despite who's trying to push you down. He comes in and gives you strength that you can't explain, grace to outlast what should stop you. If you're only focused on God bringing you out, then you're going to be disappointed. Because God doesn't do things on our timetable. Sometimes it's taking longer than we thought, but when you ask God to come in, you can be at rest. God, I know you're right here with me. You are ordering my steps, and at the right time, you'll get me to where I'm supposed to be. You don't have to fight everything, live upset, can't sleep at night. That happens when you're only focused on getting out. God is waiting to come in. When you ask Him, you're saying, God, don't just change the circumstances, change me. Help me to not just go through this situation. Help me to grow through it. Help me to learn. Increase my faith. Let my character come up higher. If God delivered us out of everything instantly, we would never reach our highest potential. God works in the troubles. He works in the uncomfortable situations. And sometimes God is not bringing you out yet because He wants the odds to be against you in a bigger way. So when He brings you out, it will be a greater miracle. Now, voices will whisper. God doesn't even hear your prayers. That's why nothing is changing. The truth is, God is setting you up to show out in your life. When He brings you out, no one will be able to deny that His favor is on you. God said in Isaiah 43:2, "When you go through the waters, I will be with you. When you go through the rivers, they will not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned." It's interesting that God didn't say, "I'll keep you out of every fire. You won't have to face any floods." No. He said, the challenges will come. There will be adversities and things we don't understand. But the whole key to this verse is when He said, "I will be with you in the fire, in the flood, in the famine." Are you going to try to get out of something that God is going to take you through? Are you fighting the process? It's not fair, God. I can't take it anymore. Everything will change if you'll start inviting God into the fire. He's already promised He'll be with you. Maybe He's just waiting for your invitation. The right attitude is, God, I know you're going to bring me out, but in the meantime, I'm asking you to come into this challenge in my halts. Come into this loss I'm going through. Come into this depression that's trying to stop me. When you invite God into your difficulty, you'll feel Him breathing in your direction, empowering you, enabling you, favoring you. Is it a greater testimony that keeps you out of the fire, or that He came with you in the fire and brought you through it? David said, Psalm 23:4, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Why? Because you are with me. When you know God is with you, when you've invited Him into your situation, you'll have a smile in the middle of difficulty. You'll have a song of praise in the prison, like Paul and like Silas. You won't be complaining about the trouble, worried about when it's gonna work out. You'll be at peace in the midst of the storm. And the reason David didn't live afraid, even though he went through valleys and all kinds of adversities, is he understood this principle to invite God into the trouble. He wasn't just waiting to get out. He knew that God was right there with him. If you're only praying, "God, get me out," you'll be discouraged until it changes. You say, "I can't enjoy my life. I have this child that's off course. I'm dealing with an illness. My finances are low. When it turns around, then I'll have a good attitude." You're waiting for God to bring you out while God is waiting for you to invite him in. You have to do like David. "Father, thank you that you are with me right here in this valley, and I'm not gonna live afraid, worried. I may not see a way, but I know you have a way." Instead of just trying to get out of the valley, out of the trouble, out of the fire, if you'll start saying, "God, come in. Let me feel your presence in the fire. Show me your greatness in this trouble," then you'll have a peace that passes understanding, a joy when you could be discouraged, a hope when you should be distraught. People don't determine your destiny. Bad breaks cannot stop God's plan for your life. Sickness, addictions, unfair situations don't have the final say. Now, don't be discouraged because God didn't keep you out of the fire. God doesn't stop every negative situation. He uses adversities to move us into our purposes. We would never know his power if we were never thrown into a fire, so to speak. You wouldn't know he was a healer if you never had an illness. We wouldn't know he could move mountains if we never faced big obstacles. Now, quit complaining about what you're going up against. It's not a surprise to God. The enemy may have turned up the fire 7 times hotter than normal. They didn't do that without God's permission. God is in control not just of your life, he's in control of your enemies. Instead of complaining about the fire, start inviting him into the fire. When he's with you, you cannot be defeated. You and God are a majority. He's a supernatural God. He's not limited by the fire, by the floods, by the famines. What should take you out cannot stop your destiny. Instead of complaining about everything that you don't like, if you'll recognize that God allowed the difficulty, I'm not saying that he sent it, but he allowed it because he had a purpose. And the purpose is not so you can live miserable, worried, and afraid. His purpose is to show his glory through you. It's so other people can see his power and favor on your life. Without great tests, you won't have a great testimony. Without big battles, you won't see big victories. But too often, we're putting conditions on God and conditions on our prayer. God, I'll be happy if my boss moves to the backside of Mars. When you get him out of my life, then I'll have a good attitude. Have you ever thought God may be using that person to do a work in you, to grow you up, to develop your character, to teach you to love those that are not very lovable? Instead of praying, "God, get me out of this situation," I'm asking you to start praying, "God, come into this situation. Help me love. Help me to have a good attitude. Help me to do the right thing when the wrong thing is happening." It's very powerful when you can say, "God, if my boss never moves, if he's here until I go to heaven, I know you have given me the strength to overcome, the power to be happy in the middle of this difficulty. And I'm not going to let this person, this sickness, this injustice still my joy." Now you'll grow it. Now you're coming up higher, because sometimes God is waiting for us to pass the test before he brings us out. The psalmist said, Psalm 46:1, "God is a very present help in times of trouble." We know that God is always with us. But when you're in difficulties and you invite him in, you're going to feel his presence in a greater way. You're going to be more aware that you are not alone. When you get thrown into the fire, so to speak, you won't be bitter. You'll stay in faith, knowing that the fourth man is right there with you. The God who controls the fire, the God who restores, who pays you back for the injustice is right there, watching over you, protecting you, ordering your steps. Moses went through a difficult situation. He didn't know how it was going to work out. I'm sure he was tempted to worry and think about how big his enemies were. But God said to him in Exodus 33:14, "Moses, I will go with you. I will give you rest. Everything will be fine for you. Maybe you're facing some challenges. Life hasn't turned out the way you thought. You asked God to keep you out of the fire, but it didn't happen your way. Now you're wondering how you're going to beat the illness, how your family's going to be restored. God is saying to you what he said to Moses, I'm going with you. You're not in the fire by yourself. I have thee in the palm of my hand. I'm fighting your battles. That obstacle may be too much for you, but it is not too much for our God. Right now, he is pushing back forces of darkness. He's keeping the fire from burning you. He's not letting those waters drown you. He's your protector, your deliverer, your waymaker, your healer, your provider. You don't have to do this on your own. You don't have to figure out everything. You're not going to know all the details. You have to walk by faith and not by sight, knowing that he is right there with you, that he's promised everything is going to be all right for you. I wonder if you're worried about something even though God is on your boat. He's already promised you that he would restore health back into you, that you would lend and not borrow, that as for you and your house, you would serve the Lord. Now the circumstances may look the opposite. The medical reports not good. Your loved ones off course. It's easy to live worried, upset, but can I encourage you? The Most High God is on your boat. Those winds cannot stop you. The sickness, the injustice, the people, they cannot keep you from your destiny. You might as well relax. Everything is going to be fine for you. Sure, the waves may be big, but you have an advantage. The God who controls the universe is right there with you. Now, do your part. Start thanking him that he's fighting your battles. Start shining where you are, being your best in spite of the difficulties. Don't wait till it changes. You have to invite him in before he brings you out. If you'll do this, I believe and declare, like these teenagers, that fire is not going to burn you.